Welcome to another episode of Power Alphas. So excited for this journey where we're going to talk about inspiring true stories. We're going to talk about people's success, failures, and everything above. And I cannot wait to continue this journey with my beautiful, beautiful fiance, my co-host, Mandy Saccomanno.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited, and we're excited for all the feedback that we've been getting for our first episode.
Yeah.
So we will continue to ask you guys, what you guys want to hear from our stories and more. So a lot of the first episode was about me, babe. I think it's time we get into the nitty gritty of you and your stories. And I know you've been through a ton of stuff between NFL, WWE, and just, how you became a professional athlete, all the ups and downs. So I think we should get into that a little bit.
You want to get into that
what
a little bit?
What do you think?
Okay, we could do that.
I mean, I don't know if we have enough time.
No.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been so fortunate and blessed to be a professional athlete in two different industries. I had the privilege to play in the NFL for 6 years, and I had also had the privilege to be a WWE superstar for 6 years. So for that, I am so grateful. It's been a heck of a run. But again, there's a lot of things that come way before that success that I think people do not understand or people miss sight of. And I think it's something that I love this platform. We can talk about that. We can talk about things like this. And I can't wait to just kind of dabble into other people's careers and other people we bring on the show. So for that, you could ask me whatever you want. I love to share those stories. I think that's why people need to really watch this podcast, because it's not just the glamour and the lights or the things you see in social media. It's what inspired from a young child. What was my motivation? What was your motivation? What was their motivation? So for something like that, I'm excited to dabble into that. So,
yeah, and I think it is really important to see all of that. And, when we first met and you kind of talked to me a little bit about how you started and how you were since you were a little kid. And I think obviously that always plays a big role in, who you become as an adult. But I think the biggest thing that stands out to me from your childhood up until when you started playing football, I think is the most inspiring, and kind of like when I told my brothers, they couldn't even believe it, that you started playing football in high school.
17.
What time? Yeah, 17. So I feel like from my experience, my brothers all played sports and everything. And from what I know, it's like to become a professional athlete, especially to make it to the NFL, to start playing football when you were 17 is kind of insane. I mean, people don't even believe that, which is crazy.
No, it's actually crazy. When I went to the NFL, I said that one time at practice. I forgot we were talking with the coaches, and I said, yeah, I didn't start playing football until I was 17. And everyone kind of laughed. I didn't even say it. Oh, he's joking. It's not even real. And I said, no, I started playing at 17. And they were all looked at me, and they were like, wow. I think the stat is 90% of players who make it to the NFL start before the age of 7.
Right.
But to kind of go back to that, it's a little misconstrued when someone says that, because my whole life was sports.
Yeah.
Since I was 3 years old, 4 years old, since I can remember, my dad was taking me to some sort of practice. And for me, it was the passion. I knew all I cared about was competing. All I cared about was being the best at the sport or the position I played at that moment. So for me, it kind of prepared me. Yes, football was the last sport I picked up, but when you play every single sport growing up, and every single night you have a basketball practice or a baseball practice or swimming. I used to swim in the summer. So for me, it was the work ethic I developed. It was the commitment I developed. So when I got into a new sport like football, where I was very green per se, I was very raw to the sport, I did not lack the work ethic. I did not lack the commitment to be great at something. And I didn't know the game of football, right? I didn't know the X's and O's of football, but I did know that I had the work ethic and I had the determination to get better.
Right.
So for me, I was very, God has blessed me, and I'm very grateful to this day with the athleticism from my parents or from wherever I got it from. So for that, I'm very grateful for. But that's something that was a little misconstrued, because people were like, you started at 17, but it's not that I just started playing sports at 17.
No, of course. But
So
to
that
know
was
the
the biggest
game
thing.
is obviously,
And to be
it
honest
takes
with you,
a long time.
that was a big learning curve for me. So, and I think that's when we can dabble into something like this and people could hear stories that the commitment and the sacrifice I had to do was to an extreme. I mean, literally, it was like, I remember I started playing at 17, and by 21, I was top 5 in the country in my position. So 5-year span, I went from not even playing football to being top 5 in my position in the world.
Crazy.
But I think those 5 years that people have to realize is I didn't have no life outside of football. I literally, everything I did in my life was predicated to becoming a better athlete or a better football player. So if it did not allow me to be better, I didn't do it, right? I never drank.
Right.
I never smoked. I never did drugs. I never even partied because I said in my mind, I was like, oh, this is not going to make me better, so what am I doing that for? So for me, it was almost like I had these blinders on, and I committed everything I had.
Would you say it was a little bit like an obsession in a good way?
Oh, 100% obsession.
Because we always talk about that.
There's no question that anybody who succeeds at a high level, and I'm not even talking about just professional sports.
No,
I'm talking about businesses, CEOs, running a company, running a podcast booth, whatever you're passionate about and you become successful about, that word obsessity has to be in there. You have to be obsessed with being great.
Yeah.
You have to be obsessed with improving, right? One of the quotes I heard that was really good, you know, a lot of people are capable and able to do things, but are you willing to do something? Meaning, are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to give up? Are you willing to not do what everybody else is doing? And for me, when I look back on my college career, I knew I was so far behind the 8 ball that I stayed in the film room at 12 o'clock at night every night.
You went above and beyond.
I had to. I had no choice, though.
Of course.
I was so far behind these guys that played football for 10 years already, 12 years already, that were that good. And yes, I was so driven athletically to be better than them, but I knew I was so far behind mentally. So for me, like didn't have a college life. And for me, I don't regret that. I am so grateful for it, but it allowed me to develop into the football player I am or was at that moment, and went to the NFL and played 6 years. But for me, I think the lesson I learned from all that, and a lesson I would love to give back to people that are listening to this, is you can do whatever you want. You could do whatever you want. You just got to put your mind to it. You have to sacrifice. You have to know what you can and can't do to become successful. And I think people are scared to make that jump. We talked about in the last podcast about leaving your comfort zone.
Right, yeah.
Right? Leaving your comfort zone is a huge aspect to success. So for me, it was a great journey to play and accomplish what I wanted to accomplish in college. And I was very fortunate to be a second-round pick and play 6 years in the NFL. My NFL pro career was a little more up and down for factors we don't need to get into that wasn't all in my control, but I've learned from it and become a better person from it. And I think that's the biggest thing you could take away from experiences like that.
Of course. And I think, all those years of sacrificing and, missing those college parties or going out drinking and doing whatever. And, I think obviously you would say that all paid off. I mean, look at you now. You're able to have this, you're able to have freedom, and you can, sit back and do other things that you want to do. So I think it's all well worth it.
No, absolutely. I think what you just said is, I actually chased the dream for 20 years, almost to the date, literally to the date. I left home at 18 years old, and I went to Oregon State. I got to give them a big shout out, top 25 right now, Oregon State. Changed my life. But when I say 20 years, I literally was on this journey for 20 years where I had the blinders. I was so committed to my craft. I was so dedicated to my craft, and I was willing to do whatever I had to do, become the best at what I was doing at that moment, right? And in exchange, you miss a lot.
Right.
You give up a lot.
Yeah.
I missed 4 funerals, I missed 2 weddings, and 10 Christmases in a row.
Wow.
My family.
That's crazy.
10.
10.
And for me, I look back now and I'm like, wow, is it all worth it? Absolutely.
Right.
But that's something that you have to learn if you want to be successful. What do you sacrifice? What are you willing to sacrifice? Not what you're able to or capable of, because you're capable of doing a lot. But are you willing to do that? Are you willing to put the hours in? Are you willing to miss Christmas with your family to reach your goal? So for me, that mindset was always deep instilled in me from a very, very young age. And I think that's one thing that I'm very grateful for, that God gave me the ability to understand that I wanted to be a pro athlete, understand that I wanted to be successful in some sort of sports. But he also said, I'm going to give you the mindset of what you have to do to get there. Like when I was like 11, 12 years old, you ask a kid, what do you want to be? I want to be a pro athlete, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you smile at him, right?
Yeah.
But I actually had the mindset, like, I want to be a pro athlete, but I already know I got to do this, and this, right?
Right.
So for me, it was that for 20 years. And I think when I came back here with you and we bought our house together here, it was almost 20 years to the date. And I think that was the moment in my life where I was like, all right, I'm done with that sacrifice part of my life. I'm done with chasing that dream. I was a pro athlete for, really 12 years in 2 different sports, but 20 years in a whole thing of college and between the gap between WWE or NFL and WWE. So for me, it got to a point where like I really wanted to focus on enjoying the little things in life with you, especially, right?
Coffee time.
Coffee time. But honestly, like I never, as weird as it sounds, I never even enjoyed having a cup of coffee with my, with my fiance.
You were very different when I first met you, too.
I was different, huh?
Very different, yeah. So, not in a bad way, but when we first met, I feel like you were still in that mode of chasing, and it's fine. I was doing the same thing, and we're both very driven, so we both were, obviously always working out, and we're so in tune with our bodies and all these great things. But I feel like you didn't have that balance.
Nope.
And I
Spot
feel
on.
like it was a little bit like, I remember sometimes being like, oh, and it's, it's fine. I actually commend that you're not like, you don't need to be out like drinking and getting drunk to like socialize. You're really good at that stuff. And like, there's some people that are out there that do that. So I like that you're not a big drinker and all that, but I remember I'm like, I don't know, like, hey, does he want to have a drink? Can he get loose a little bit? Like, I just feel like he's a little, but I think that was part of your life for so long that you're so driven. And I think that's what made you so successful. So it's not a bad thing at all. And I think we're all a little, we all have addictive personalities in a way. I know I have a ton of that in my family, obviously, but it's like, it's where you put that addiction.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
It can go either way. And I think we've seen that with, a lot of people. So I definitely have it a little bit. I've put it in some good places, I think. And I think, same with you. And I think even when you were little, I'm sure little things like your mom even would say, like, that she could just tell you were going to like do something great, or you were going to be something great, because everything you did was very like meticulous and like you were very organized.
Absolutely.
And very obsessive with it, and that was kind of like how my brother was too. Everything he did, the way he mowed the lawn, the lines had to be so straight, or else like he had to redo it over until everything he did was just so perfect. So I think that there's good and bad traits with that. But you talked a little bit about Oregon State, and I want to know, how was that transition from Boca Raton to Oregon State? That was quite the transition, I would imagine, huh?
Quite the transition. I don't know if you could go farther away from home. I think it was 3,000 miles. It was like literally South Florida all the way to the tip of the United States, of the northwest of Oregon State. And it couldn't be more, it was 2 different cultures, 2 different worlds, 2 different ways of life. And for me, again, I was so focused on football that I didn't let it distract me or kind of derail me, but it was the biggest culture change for me as a young man that I've ever been through. I mean, I was 18 years old. I mean, I was going to the beach at Christmas, right? We were all sunshine and being in the sun and being outside. All of a sudden I go to Oregon, and you literally will go 6 to 7 months with never seeing the sun.
That's
like
insane.
Literally never seeing the sun.
Insane.
It will rain, and it's not Florida rain.
Yeah.
It's like a mist. It's a bothering mist.
God, even
Right?
worse.
So, and it was just, everybody was different. Like, I remember one day I put like product in my hair and people looked at me like I was weird. Like, what is this kid doing? So for me, it was just like a whole different way of life. But what kept me so here was football. And I look back and I'm like I've gone back to visit after I left and went to NFL and done camps and I'm like, whoa, like I lived here for 4 years. Like I actually couldn't believe how focused I was in my craft because I didn't even see really what was going around me. And it was hard for me because I come from always being outside, enjoying the nice weather, and it's like a total opposite.
It was probably a little bit better in a sense because you didn't have, I mean, you were so focused, but you didn't have a lot of distractions.
100%.
Like you never dated anyone in college,
Never.
right? Obviously, I
Nope.
was your first,
Nope.
so we know
You're
that.
first.
But
no, not even.
right?
Spot on. No,
Like-
you know, I wanted to go to Florida State. That was like my dream.
Yeah.
Right? I was a big Florida State fan. I don't think I would have become the player I became in college, top 5 in my position, All-American, if I went to Florida State. Way too many distractions, close to home, partiers. You know, I think it was a lot more things that would get you in trouble.
Definitely.
But you know, you did touch on something a minute ago. You said balance and obsessed, right? If I had to go back and critique myself or give some advice, I think having balance in your life is very important, especially when things start to go south.
Yes.
Right? When things start to go south, if you don't have that balance, it's okay to be obsessed with something. It's okay to have that work ethic or something. It's okay to want to be the best. But if I had to give some advice that I maybe did a little wrong, was my balance was off. I did not have balance. And for me, the balance started to come really that it wasn't there was about 26, when in the NFL it was my 3rd year and I was the starter and I was the year they had the banner on the stadium and I was kind of built up to be the guy and we were the worst team in the NFL. And it was just so mentally draining and I didn't have balance.
Right. Where do you go to?
And I had nowhere to go.
That's the worst
right?
part.
And it was like almost a spiral down. And I was like, it was the first time in my life actually where I was setting goals and I was reaching them and God was at that point blessing me to reach every goal I was setting out to, right? I was like, oh, I want to go to big time college, went to big time college. I want to become a college starter, became a college starter. I want to become All-American, became All-American. I want to be a first, second round draft pick, became a second round draft pick. I want to become an NFL starter, became an NFL starter. So now everything's going smooth. I'm like, oh, wow, this is good, right? I don't need balance. I'm obsessed, whatever it was. All of a sudden, you start to derail a little bit. God's like, I'm in control, not you. And you start to realize, like, wow, this is not my plan, right? This wasn't my plan. What's going on here? And all of a sudden, you start to derail a little bit. And then the pressure of being a professional athlete, the social media, the social media wasn't as prevalent then, but even the media, the internet was so... I wasn't ready for it at 25. I really wasn't.
When you're young like that,
I was not.
And you have so much pressure, I can't even imagine.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't ready for the fans talking. 1 week they love me, 1 week they hate me. 1 week I'm good, 1 week I suck, right? And that's hard for a 24-year-old, a 25-year-old. I even see like right now Zach Wilson and the New York Jets. I feel for him. The guy was a number 2 pick of the draft. You know how good you have to be.
I think people lose perspective of that.
Well,
I think that's what it's all about.
100%.
They make one wrong, turn, whatever it may be, and it's like, oh, they suck. But it's like, do you understand what it takes to be in that position?
Let's just clear some up right now. If you even step on an NFL field and you buckle your helmet for a Sunday and you're in that 46-man roster for that starting, you are a stud.
Right.
You're a stud.
No question.
You've been the best at your high school team. You've been the best at your college team.
Yep.
You've been so for me, it really strikes a different nerve when I hear people talk about a first round bust or a second round bust or even he's not as good as we thought. Okay, there's so many other factors that will come into play for a professional athlete's career to be successful that they don't even dabble into sometimes. Like I want to talk about Zach Wilson for a second because this guy is in New York. He's getting so much scrutiny. He's getting so much people talking about him. And he's in the biggest spotlight probably in professional sports. New York is probably the biggest media central of professional sports. The kid looks like he's 12, right?
Literally.
He's young, but he was a second pick of the draft. He's got so much talent. It's unbelievable. And he's getting all this negativity. But nobody talks about the factors that are coming into play. right? It could be so much of the offensive scheme doesn't fit his eye, or maybe the protections that are not as good enough for him to get the ball off. Maybe the play calling isn't correct at the moment where he gets all the blunt. He gets all the blame.
There's so many factors.
And they take his, and the thing problem is now it's a kid that age. You're like a fragile egg, right? When you get into the NFL. Every stud athlete, even though they're very successful getting there, when you get to the NFL, it's a very, it's intimidating
of course.
field, right? Like the word alpha. I mean, football, arguably, I personally believe, is the most alpha sport. Maybe besides boxing and UFC. I tip my hat to UFC fighters and boxers, combat fighters. But a sport like football is stacked with alpha males, alpha men who were the best at all their positions. So now you got all the best of the best on one field at one time, right?
Wild.
But you still, their confidence can still be very vulnerable. And a guy like that who's young in the spotlight, I'm pushing for that kid because he's got all the talent in the world. They need to build maybe a scheme around him right now to help him improve, because it's not just his fault if he fails. It's the coach's fault, in my opinion. It's the organization's fault, in my opinion. It's the puzzle pieces around that player that dictates sometimes how good he plays, right? Like even Peyton Manning, one of the best ever. His first year in NFL, he was horrific. People don't talk about that.
Right.
So that's another thing that you kind of dive on. I know we got off track a little bit, but that's something that's important people need to hear.
For sure. And you know, I think you and I can relate to that as well, coming into WWE and dealing with the pressure and the way we look, and you know, especially you too. I feel like you even maybe dealt with it a little bit more, but it was like, I remember them telling you, like, you know, we got to make sure you're perfect before you get out there. Everything is, you know, all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, and like you just have to be, because of the way you look. And it's like it's gonna take a long time. First of all, nobody's perfect, but it's gonna take a long time for that to happen. But you need reps, you need practice, you need to get out there.
Absolutely.
And I feel like keeping people out on the sideline, like, and I was like that a little bit too, but it's like you gotta just throw them out there. Just see what sticks, you know?
100%.
And I think the pressure is what messes with people's confidence in a lot of different sports, because mentally a lot of people aren't ready for that, and they've trained and they've done so much to get to where they are, but it's like if one little wrong move, like I remember I was in the ring at one point, and you know, if my foot turned a little bit too much to the left, it was like, she sucks, can't wrestle, terrible. Like it's a lot to deal with, but people don't realize, because now with social media it makes it 10 times worse. But it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. So I can't even imagine what's going through his head, I'm sure.
But you just
too.
said pressure too, like, right? So pressure is what molds success, in my opinion, right? Like there's so much failure, but failure, you continue to go, you continue to push, and then you'll continue to succeed, right? So every time you see an athlete being successful, they failed before. We all failed before, right? But that pressure, I personally believe, on every level, pressure is what can make a good athlete to a great athlete. And I think how you handle pressure, how you handle circumstances, right? Some of the greatest athletes of all time used to thrive in pressure. I mean, Michael Jordan used to love Tiger Woods, I personally believe, when you look at Tiger Woods' career, I mean, that guy performed, I think, his best shots under pressure. So that's how you become great. And I even look at like Tom Brady, while he's the greatest of all time. Yes, he got 7 rings, but the way he performed under pressure can change who you become and who you are as an athlete.
Oh,
by
definitely.
far.
100%.
No question about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, listen,
I think that's what separates.
And I'm not even afraid to admit, I look back and I failed at a high level on some of that aspects of it. I mean, obviously I was very successful to be there, and every other athlete that's there, but there will be times where you fail under pressure, numerous times, over and over and over again. And that's life, though. Like that's
how you learn.
People that are listening to this, it's life. It's any kind of business you want to get into, any kind of success you want to chase, the pressure will always grow as you become more successful.
And you become better.
And you become better at it, absolutely. Then the pressure gets lighter, right? Maybe the first couple times you're put under pressure, you don't really know how to react, and it's not really a good reaction.
Right.
Then as the more pressure comes and maybe more pressure situations, you get better at acting and better resolving.
Yeah, you learn how to deal with it because you've been down this road before. You're
100%.
less impulsive of acting out or, you know, doing something stupid. So, Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So then obviously Oregon to second round draft pick to the Tampa Buccaneers.
Yep.
That's pretty wild. Like, I remember, obviously, you told me, and I've seen so many photos and stuff, but stories of you guys all at the house waiting for that. What is it? What was it? Phone call? I don't even know.
Yeah.
Is it
So
more of a...
yeah, it was a phone. So back in the day when I got drafted, 2007, the draft was broken up in 2 days. First, second, and third round was on Saturday, and 4 through 7 was on a Sunday. So basically, when you're going through the draft, like you would kind of know if like you're a first day guy or a second day guy by just...
How do you know?
Well, it's how, your college ranking, it's how your combine performance was, how you rank in your position. If you're top...
You kind of have an idea.
You have an idea.
Yeah.
But a lot of times people fall in and out. It's really a fine line from a guy going a second round pick to a fourth round pick. And if you fall, sometimes you fall the next day. So back then, my mom wanted to have a huge party at the house. I'll never forget it. We had like 60 people at the house.
Wow.
And I was supposed to be a first day guy, but again, anything could happen, right? And that day was very long, and I ended up being a second round draft pick toward the end of the second round. I think it was like 54 to be exact. So for me, that phone call was the single moment time in my life where I really was like everything I ever worked for, everything I ever sacrificed, everything I gave up, all the funerals and the weddings I was missing and the Christmases I was missing was so worth it to hug my mom and to hug my dad and say I made it. I made to the NFL. I was picked 54 that year, so I was top 54 players in the world at that moment in time. And for me, that was like one of those surreal moments, right? That was like one of those like, I started at 17 years old. And for me, I was never supposed to make it, right, in football. I mean, I was first of all, I was a white DB, so I'm a minority in that profession, right? I mean, I think playing safety, it's like 99% African American, right? Even in football in general, is majority African American, right? So you look at my position, I was already so behind the 8 ball. And so for me, it was just a moment of everything was worth it. And I think you asked me earlier, and I haven't really touched on it yet, but what drove me was challenges. Challenges in my life, even to this day, how I get motivated is challenges. And I remember my baseball coach pulling me aside one day, and he said to me, I'll never forget this. And he was kind of pushing me to baseball so I could see where his thought process was, but he changed my life forever because he pulled me aside and he said to me, he goes, Sabby, what are you doing? He goes, I think he said, what the fuck you doing? What are you doing with this football shit? He goes, you're never gonna make it in football. He goes, you'll never you'll D1, you're meant to play 1 year. He goes, you're white. He goes, stop with that bullshit. He goes, commit to baseball, and you have a chance to go play pro baseball. I remember looking at that dude, and like time stood still. And I was like, really?
Really? Yeah.
I was like, really?
You're going to tell me that.
You're going to tell me I can't do something? And for me, that was all I needed. I remember where I was. I remember where I was standing. He pulled me in the high school locker room in baseball, and I was like, how dare you tell me I can't do something? And for me, ever since then, I was like, watch.
Watch me, yeah.
And for me, it was like at that moment in time, I was like, here we go.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like always saying I couldn't do something. Oh, you can't start in college football. Well, start as a sophomore. You can't be All-American. I was All-American.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like the mindset of challenges, even to this day, drives me to no other. And I think every pro athlete has that, and I think every person can dive into that. Whatever their passion is, what motivates you to be successful, and if it's a challenge, figure out a way to challenge yourself.
Yep.
Right? Figure it out. I mean, figure it out. Figure it out. If whatever you need fuel for in your life, sometimes you need to draw it from within.
For sure.
But sometimes people give it to you. You know, and I remember my high school coach.
Did you ever see him after?
It's so funny.
When you made it and everything?
I'll tell you a true story. So I get a second round draft pick. I think Boca High's been around for, 70 years, 75 years. Boca High. My mom went to Boca High.
Right.
And it's really cool to say that I'm the highest drafted NFL player ever to come out of Boca High.
Wow. That's impressive.
And I'm very grateful for that accomplishment. And I remember I saw him the first year I got drafted. And he looked at me, and he kind of tipped his hat, and he kind of smiled because he kind of knew. And I kind of stared at him, right? I didn't even say anything to him.
Because of you, motherfucker.
but honestly,
Because of you.
But I was grateful. I was so
Right.
freaking grateful.
But the reward when you get there from people constantly telling you can't do this, you can't be that, whatever. Finally, when you get there, I feel like it's so much more rewarding and fulfilling in that moment too, because you did it for yourself, obviously, but you did it for those people that didn't think you could, and that's what fueled you to get here. So I feel like that's also like such a fulfilling moment too.
It is, and you know what's even more. It's fulfilling, but you know what's even more sad is like just anybody, even you were in the car on the way here, we were looking at some of the comments, right? Like, it's like the more you succeed, they sit and wait for you to fail, or they sit and wait for you to trip up. So they say, "Oh, I told you so." Oh, I told you so. He wasn't as good as he thought. Oh, she's not as good as you thought. What do you mean you're not as good as you thought?
Oh yeah.
And for me, it's like, it's so sad to see people that honestly are so unhappy with themselves that have to make negative comments about other people.
Like we talked about last night, I was never a fan of, like you said, I think there was a situation when you were in the ring one time and someone turned to you and was like, why are you rooting for them, or why are you trying to help them?
Oh, yep.
They're going to take your spot in a heartbeat. It's like, why not wish success for other people? Because I truly believe that's good karma, and I think it's going to come back to you, and you're going to get that success or more success. But like, why not like wish success on other people? Like, what is it? Why are you in competition with that person? You know what I mean? Like, don't you want to see them raise to heights? Like, I just feel like it's...
You just said one of the best advices I ever got. And that's simple. What you just said, literally, and people are listening, if you change that simple mindset, what Mandy just said, wish success upon everybody, help everybody become successful. I promise you this, try that. Try what I just said for 6 weeks and wish success upon everybody. Help everybody become successful. Because once that happens, it actually opens up your world to more success, more opportunities.
100%.
And for me, what you just said, I remember when a very successful businessman, very, very successful, said that to me. I was in the weight room. I think I was still in the NFL. And he said to me, "Sabby, remember one thing, wish success upon everybody." And I didn't even know what he was really talking about that moment in time. But I look back now and I'm like, wow, that's some of the best advice I ever got.
And you've always been like that, I noticed. Like,
always trying to help.
Very, selfless in that aspect of like trying to help others. You never made comments about, like, even when we were wrestling, like, it is, and like you came from football. So, I mean, what's more ruthless than that sport and the competition that you have to face every day. But it's like, don't think about someone taking your spot so much. Do you focus on you?
100%.
And, like, I feel like that's even with wrestling, with my career. It was like, and a lot of the girls and guys were like that. It was always like, what are they doing? Or, or someone stole your catchphrase or your promo or whatever. It's like, you know what? At the end of the day, people are going to steal stuff. Focus on you. Think of something better. They took it. It's not even that great. You know what I mean? Like, there's always something. If you just stay positive and that mindset, I feel like you've always been really good with that, which is...
Well, you're wasting energy.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You're wasting energy trying to control something you can't control, right? And so why are we wasting energy about it?
True.
You only can control... That's another thing I used to hear some really good advice is when you get to this high level of anything, business, sports, any kind of success, focus on what you can control. And that's it. That's it. Focus on your work ethic. Focus on your mentality.
And that's in everything.
100%. So everything that, now even I remember I got caught up in as a professional athlete, especially at the high level when you're in the NFL, and it's a team game, right? You got 53 players on that team and you got 20, 30 coaches, GMs, front office. So there's a lot of factors moving around. And you waste more energy thinking and worrying about things that you cannot control. Like, why am I worrying about this when I can't control that, right? Yeah. So that's another thing I give advice that again, this is me giving advice from maybe things I made a mistake on.
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to pass that knowledge down to young athletes or even young people that are inspired to do anything to be successful, right? Like, do not focus on things you can't control. But you did say something, and I think that's spot on. Wish and help everybody become successful, because I promise you this, it will open up doors for you.
100%.
That I can guarantee. 100% open up doors.
Even like for me, the last few years too, and we both, we do a lot for our families and everything, but I think the more I give back and help with my family or whatever it may be, the more success I've gained. And I don't know if, it could be a blessing, it could be a coincidence. I don't know what it is, but I just feel like it's energy. Yeah. Focus yourself with positive and good energy, and I think it comes back to you.
There's no doubt about it.
But
energy
getting
level.
back to, so you play for Tampa Bucks for how many years? 6?
So I was with Tampa for 4.5 years.
4.5, okay.
Yes, and then Kansas City for a couple.
Oh, yeah. So how was that transition?
My pro career, very grateful. Don't get me wrong. I'm so grateful, so blessed. But I think when you have that competitive edge to become a professional athlete, that obsessity, like you talked about earlier, every professional athlete has some sort of obsession. I don't care what it is. You cannot become that great at a sport if you're not obsessed with it. So for me, from my personal standpoint, obviously my pro career wasn't long enough. Didn't play long enough. You always want more money. You always want more plays. You always want more years. That being said, I'm very grateful for my time. I thank God every day for the time. But my pro career was a very up and down roller coaster. I was a high pick, a lot of expectations. Camera was on me day one. And then my first year, my rookie, I actually got hurt. Broke my foot in week 2. Broke my foot. Fourth metatarsal was out the whole year. And here was the worst part about that.
What is that called?
The fourth metatarsal on your foot. Oh,
metatarsal. Okay.
The worst part about that was it hurt the day I did it, never hurt again. But the way the NFL was booked back then, you go on IR, you can't come off. So you're out for the whole year because they need your roster spot. So now I go from like high of high, right? A second round draft pick. I have a 7-figure contract come out of college. I've hit all my goals and dreams I've set. I've hit them. All of a sudden, my GM tells me you're out for the year. Oof. Now, think about it. First time being a professional athlete, right? Now, what am I doing with my life? I don't have to go to school. I have no classes. I can't go to practice and play football. Like I was 23 years old, and I went from a high of high to low of low, talking about depression. Had a broken foot, and I had no purpose. And it was actually the most money I ever made in my life in 1 year because of my signing bonus and all that stuff, my contract. But
that just goes to show it
miserable,
doesn't matter. Yeah.
Miserable, right? So, but at that point, I'll be honest with you, I thought it was a blessing a little bit because I felt like I was burnt out. Because the way college is, and then the pros is you go from college to all-star game to NFL combine to pros. So you really don't get a break in the offseason. So I was kind of burnt out. So that being said, I came back in 2008, had my best year. Best year in NFL by far. Coach Gruden, shout out to Coach Gruden, changed my life. Second round draft pick back in 2007. What a great coach. What a great guy. It was a privilege to play for Coach Gruden. 2008 was my best year. Then they fire him going in 2009, which was probably the turning point of my career. But they fire him, they rebuild, they bring in a whole new staff, a whole new team pretty much, and that was like my big year for stardom, and we were the worst team in the NFL. Like literally 0-8 at one point. Oof. So that's when we kind of talk about I wasn't ready for that. My balance wasn't there. I wasn't ready mentally for what it was about to bring for me. So that was rough, to speed that up. Then I came back in 2010, a lot of controversy because we were a worse team. I got hurt. They benched me. I asked for a trade. They wouldn't trade me for about 8 weeks. They finally traded me. Then I get a brand new shot at Kansas City, which I was so grateful for a couple years. I did whatever they asked me to do. But I felt like I never got my pro career rolling to where I wanted to be. And I look back now, and I just wish I could have done a couple things different, but I am extremely grateful. But I just think I left a lot more in the tank, and I really thought I had more to offer at that high level, that I believe that I could have been more of an impact at that high level. But again, there's a lot of factors that come into play for an athlete at that level that you can't control. So there was things I could have done better. Absolutely. But there's a lot of things that was out of my control to prolong my professional NFL career. So that looking back now, and I've also learned by talking to a lot of other pro athletes, being around a lot of successful professional athletes, every pro athlete has a story of how it ended, and most of them suck. Meaning that I think you're never fully satisfied with how long you play or how much money you make. Because you always want to, if you play 9 years, you want to play 10 years. You want to play 10, you want to play 11 maybe, right?
I think that's in life,
If you make 10 million, you want to make 11 million, 100%.
Yeah.
So there has to be a point where you look back and you say, wow, I'm grateful, I'm complacent, I'm happy of what I've accomplished.
And you should be. And we always talk about it where, like, God forbid something didn't go as planned, or, you should be so grateful that you made it there and you played for 6 years, because, what if you had an injury that made you,
Absolutely.
God forbid, in a wheelchair or something. Like, you just never know. There's so many scenarios out there. So I think you should be grateful.
God don't make mistakes.
Exactly.
God does not make mistakes. He took me out at the right time, for sure.
Yeah.
And
then you got to WWE and you met me. So it was the greatest
thing ever.
Greatest thing
Met
ever.
my beautiful fiance, and it's just been amazing with you, and I'm so grateful.
How did WWE reach you again?
So
originally?
WWE, funny story was, I was actually training with one of my good friends, and everyone knows him, UFC Hall of Famer, Rashad Evans. And we were training in their gym at that time I had a gym with the Black Zillions, and mostly fighters. And his agent knew Canyon, who was the head of the recruiting of WWE at the time. And it was like a photograph of me and Rashad training, and I had my shirt off.
That was it. The shirt off.
I had my shirt off, and I was still.
That was it.
But actually, I want to say something real quick about that opportunity. So I had my shirt off, right? And I was still in tip-top shape because I thought I was getting back in the NFL. I never thought I was done.
You always said that, yeah.
I never was cut. I was never deactivated. So I'm thinking, I was training twice a day, and I'm like, the phone call is going to come. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, any day now. I mean, I was a second round pick. I was a starter. I was like, I'm only 30 years old. I'm in my prime. They're going to call.
So young, yeah.
So for me, the point of this story is I was still waking up every day. My routine, training twice a day. I was working out like an animal. And I remember Rashad said something to me. I'll never forget this. Rashad Evans said to me, wow, Sabby, he goes, I admire what you're doing. I said, what do you mean? He goes, you're training every day like you're going to play a game, but you don't have a game to play. He goes, when I train for a fight, I train 8 weeks, and I know I'm fighting at the end of 8 weeks. He goes, what do you, he's like, you're staying ready. I said, Rashad, I'm staying ready, so I ain't got to get ready. And that's a mentality. That wasn't an on and off switch, right? That wasn't like, oh man, I worked hard to become a pro athlete, but I'm just gonna drop that in my life. No, my whole life is instilled in that work ethic. And I think that's what people need to hear too, is like, how you do some things, how you do all things. And for me, I got the opportunity with WWE because I was still in such great shape.
Right.
I was still at the peak of my performance athletically. So they saw a picture of me, and Canyon actually asked Rashad's agent at the time, who was this, told him. They reached out to him. I'll never forget the first phone call I had with him. I was still trying to get back in the NFL. And I said to him, I appreciate a phone call. I said, but right now I'm not interested. I'm still trying to get back in the NFL. If I don't get back in the NFL in like 6 months, give me a call. They called me like 6 months to the day. He calls me. And I was kind of skeptical, but I thought, you know what? I looked at The Rock, looked at some of these people that just developed a great platform from it and catapult themselves into success. I said, you know what? Challenge. Challenge accepted. And kind of go back to, I was challenged. And it was rough. Boy, it was rough. I'm not going to lie.
Culture shock.
It was rough. The challenge was rough. It was humbling.
Yes.
But the best thing that came out of it was meeting you, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, and I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to meet you, and it was a privilege to be in WWE.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Of course. Yeah, no, I mean, that's crazy, and I think you're really, I wanted to touch on this when you said about staying ready, because I noticed this about you since I've known you, and like through the ups and downs, the WWE bullshit and everything else, you managed to stay so positive and very, like, you wake up still every morning, you train. I mean, I do too. Sometimes I sleep a little later and all that. But you never like went off the, like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like derailed. Never went off the deep end.
You never went
Never
off the
changed.
deep end. You never had like a bad, like if you got a bad call or a bad something that day, it was like you always stay positive, which I think is so important. And I think it's helped me a lot the past year with everything that I've been through. But staying positive and motivating and doing what you know you love and you're doing it for yourself, I think really helps when shit doesn't, shit hits the fan or shit doesn't go your way or stuff you can't control. Because we all know how in WWE, there's a lot of things we can't control. So I think because, your career maybe in WWE didn't go as planned as you wanted it to go because of certain things, you stayed on the right track for yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I think that is going back to the theory, only worry about things you can control.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that comes from experience because I'm not afraid to admit I've been extremely successful, but I've also failed tremendous amount of times.
We all have, yeah.
I'm not afraid to admit that. And I've learned through the journey that the one thing you have and the one thing you can control is your mentality and your routine and what you instill in your mind. Because for me, I'm not gonna let something I can't control dictate how I feel, how I change my work ethic. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was just developing a lifestyle. And Ray Lewis taught me something. I had a privilege, to train with him for a year and become so close with him. There was, you okay?
Yeah.
Bless you, baby. There was a couple things that Ray taught me that I'll never forget. And one of them was creating a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. It's not just on and off switch, do this, this, and this. So once you create a lifestyle, your mentality, your thought process, that can never be broken because you control that. They don't control that. Right. They're not going to control they're not going to control if I'm going to wake up every day and train my butt off.
Right.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
Because no. Like for me, it got to a point where I wasn't a roller coaster, so it allowed me to grow and learn from my mistakes. And you always say you stay positive. And even with WWE, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'll be honest with you. The character Tino, in my eyes, I'll say it. I don't care who wants to argue me, not say it. Was one of the biggest drop balls and missed opportunities that WWE had. I'm sorry. I had people tell that to me. I believe it, and I'll never vouch away from it. That being said, I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to ever get bitter. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be grateful for the opportunity. I'm going to shake their hand and say thank you because I know I've been successful. I know the work I've put in. I know who I am as a man. You're not going to dictate you not putting me on stage or your writer not writing me in a story. It's not going to make me go home and be sad.
But that's what I think is so great about you because, I've been down that road as well with certain things and it has affected me, but you're just so good at not letting people dictate your feelings, which is so great because I feel like you've been through a lot with them. And getting back to the Tino character, I want to talk about that a little bit actually, because when I first met you, and you weren't even really when we first met, you weren't on TV.
Not yet.
That was in the beginning. But the Tino character had that character of just wow, I hate this guy. And we always talked about it, but it was so good. Obviously, we know in our world, it's good to be hated in WWE. So you did have that way about you a little bit. Even before I met you, I was like, oh God, he's fucking hot. But shit, it's
I don't like him.
Yeah, I don't like him. It's intimidating. And I had that, persona a little bit too. But
yeah, you do too. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I know. But it's nice to talk about somebody else. And you just had this Daria and I used to always say it no, you're such a good heel because you come out there and you look like Superman. Where did this guy come from? He's athletic. He can speak. There's so many things that we were just I just hate you. So I just feel I do have to agree with that was the biggest drop ball for sure.
And I don't regret anything because I'm grateful for my life. Yeah. I'm grateful for what God has blessed me with. It's just a shame that character, Tino, didn't get the push it deserved because I think I would have loved to see where that character went because I even had people, legends, Scott Hall, Dusty Rose, guys that are legends in the game, both of them rest in peace. I had the privilege to speak to both of them. They both pulled me aside and said, kid, you got the it. Don't ever let anybody tell you don't. And those were the moments that kept me going because I wasn't good at wrestling at first. Obviously, it was hard. So for me to hear the boos when I used to go out, I remember Dash and Dawson, the Revival, and a lot of different names. They're probably, in my eyes, one of the best workers in the industry, and they're so passionate, and I respect both of them. I really do. They're at AEW now, and I really do respect how they love the business, how passionate they are. They're diehards. They watch film every day, all day. They want to have the best match all day. And I admire that because I admire their work ethic. I admire their passion for their sport. I had that for football. They said to me one time, I've never seen a heel when their music hits get hated like you with no push, with no storyline. And he goes, I can't wait to see when they actually start to push you.
Yeah.
And for me, that was what kept me driven, right? And guys like that, who I look up to in the business, who are really good at what they do. What is their name right now, by the way, in AEW?
FTR?
No, it's not. No, is it FTR? No, it's not FTR.
Right
How we both forget their name right now?
Wait.
Dash and Dawson. So they were the Revival. They were FTR.
FTR, and then
what are they at AEW? But whatever. Shout out to.
Clearly, we don't watch the product that much anymore now.
They're the best workers in the industry, by the way. Just to give them some love. But
they're the best, and we know them personally.
They're the best, and they're all, absolutely. But again, like when a guy like that pulls me aside and is like, "Listen, you got that special thing," and that's really that's it. So for me, that was the only thing that I struggled with a little bit, man, because for me it was like it didn't determine my self-worth, like if I'm going to be successful, because I already believed how successful I've been. I've worked my butt off, and I've put in the hours, and I've put it. And like success is not determined by what they think or what they say, anyways, to me. But I do wish that character Tino was pushed, because I used to hear all the time, "Oh, wait till Vince McMahon sees you."
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't
heard
wait.
That a lot too.
Oh, I can't wait to Vince. And then I remember the last thing I'll talk about Tino, which was sad to me, and I won't name no names, but there was a writer that was been in the business for 15 years, and he was, I think, a writer for Vince for about 10, and I think he became a writer at NXT, one of the head writers in NXT. And he texted me about a month after my final we parted ways, and he said to me, "I've been in the business 15 years." He goes, "I've never seen or witnessed a bigger drop ball on a megastar than you." And for me, that kind of kept, I was grateful for that text, and it was what it was. But to this day, I believe Vince can hear this or not, Triple H can hear this or not. I don't know if they ever had a character with the total package of being a former NFL starter, a former second-round pick, a former elite world-class athlete. The character was built like Superman, 6'4", 240, chiseled.
Here comes the promo.
Here comes the promo. But this is just a fact. This is a fact about Tino. No, I'm being honest with you.
No, it's true, though.
I don't know, arguable or not, that a guy that can talk, had presence, and had all that. And I remember he used to say to me, I had all that, but he wanted me to get better in the ring, and I needed time to do that.
And you did.
And I did.
And you did.
So here's the funny thing is, for me, I truly believe, for all the wrestling fans watching this, I know you're going to say your no say, hate say, whatever you want to say, but I promise you, that industry has never seen the total package of a guy like Tino, in my eyes.
Tell him.
I'm sorry. People say, "Oh, Brock Lesnar was an Olympic." Absolutely, he was a UFC fighter, stud, whatever it was. That guy is absolute animal.
Yeah.
But let's not forget, he tried to come in our field, my field, where I was very successful, where I was a second-round pick, and he didn't even make the team. So it's a little misconstrued when people talk about it.
There's a lot of guys that they say that were in the NFL from my. And I remember I asked you, and like a lot of them, we don't have to say names, but a lot of them didn't even play. It was just, what was it, like practice squad?
OTAs.
OTAs.
And which is, hey, listen, which is a hell of an accomplishment.
Oh, no, it's
if you
great,
go to a camp, but I don't know, has there ever been a WWE superstar that was a second-round draft pick to an organization that was a starter, that had a banner on a stadium, that had their jersey sold? So for that, I don't know. I'm being honest. Like,
no, I don't
is
either.
there?
I mean, I don't think so.
But listen, with all that being said, very humbly grateful, very humbly thankful for the opportunity to be in WWE. Led me to you, and it led me to so many more opportunities now that we could dive in right now a little bit. We talk about a little business for a little bit, that me and you have grown together outside this. And actually, I want to ask you a couple things. People think, and I actually thought the same process probably for a while. People look at WWE or whatever profession you're in, and they think it's end-all, be-all. Right? And we all get nervous. What are we going to do after this? Or after, I used to say, what am I going to do after football? What am I going to do after wrestling? let's talk. I want to ask you a couple questions. Talk a little bit about how you transitioned the last year. Talk so many things you got going on. Talk about all the companies you got, all the lotion line. I want to hear about the transition because I think people think it's that one thing is end all be all. But how have you made that transition?
Well, this is why I also try to tell a lot of the girls, especially the young ones in NXT, and I always tell them, build your brand, do as much as you can, without getting in trouble. But if it's a slap on the wrist, what are you going to do? Like, build your brand, build your following. I came into WWE with a little bit of following. I knew that I knew this was going to be an amazing career for me. I didn't know how long it would be. I didn't know what I'd be doing after this. So I feel like there's so many factors, but I always wanted to continue with the fitness world that I was involved in, whether it was sponsorships or, the bodybuilding that I've done, and then just lifestyle, skincare. I always loved beauty. So obviously I have my skincare line, Amarose, right up here, which has been really amazing. So I always tell them, build your brand, do as much as you can, and set yourself up for when the day comes and when you get that phone call, because it's gonna come.
Everyone's getting that phone call. Everyone's getting that phone call.
You don't know when, but set yourself up so when that day comes, you have a backup plan, or you have something. Okay, well, I started this. Where can I take this? Because I remember driving home from when I got fired, and there was this like sense of a little bit of this freeing feeling of like, wow, I was like, now I remember that person reached out to me about doing this. I couldn't do that. Now I could talk to them about that. I remember this and there was just so many different things. And that's why I always say I'm so grateful for the platform and what it presented itself with. But at the same time, now I'm able to do all these amazing things and have my own brand. And I think it's honestly like the sky's the limit because I have this following and this great fan base, I can come out with things that I've always wanted to, like whether it's a clothing line or fitness apparel, whatever it may be. There's so many different things. So I think, personally, I did a good job maintaining that following through WWE and not just putting all of my eggs in one basket.
Absolutely.
Great advice. I became good at what I did. It took me some time, but I ended up, becoming in love with the business because that was very important. And I think I never sat there and was like, okay, I'm a wrestler. That's all I'm going to do now. Forget everything else that I ever did, or like fitness or health and wellness and beauty and all that stuff. Like there's so many other things that I love to do and love to be a part of, like the beauty industry, skincare, and all these different things. And, that was a big part of Demandy's Donuts as well. When Daria and I started Demandy's Donuts, we wanted to create a platform like this. It was a YouTube channel to talk to our fans, regarding our lives, and not just wrestling lives, like what we did behind the scenes. So we did the car cam style of trying different donuts around the world, and it worked. Fans loved it. Like they loved seeing us, our dynamic. They loved seeing us eat donuts. So like that was always a thing, and we always had visions down the road of getting a brick and mortar down the road or whatever it may be. But when you have that mentality of like knowing that one day this is all going to change, or it's all going to just stop, you got to set yourself up for the future. Mm-hmm. Because unfortunately, they don't, but you got to do it yourself.
I think you just said a great point. You did a great job of using your platform for what you were doing to catapult you into other opportunities.
Yes.
And you know what? I'm so excited in the future on other podcasts, other episodes, to talk more to you about your business adventures and how you transitioned. And I cannot wait to dive into those. I think to sum up this podcast, this episode, I think it was just an opportunity for us to share our stories, to share our success and our failures and mindsets that drove us through the rough times. And I think as this podcast evolves, as we have more guests, I want to keep diving into things that will inspire other people to realize that we all go through bad times. We all go through good times, peaks and valleys. And you have to really instill a work ethic and a mindset that carries over to the all part aspects of your life, right? You can't just say, oh, I'm going to work hard when I go to the gym, but I'm going to sleep into 2 o'clock every day. That's not how life works. So to kind of sum up this podcast, I really appreciate we kind of dabble in my career a little bit and sharing my story. And I cannot wait to talk about a lot more about your businesses, all the platforms you have under your name. And as we grow as a couple, and as we do things together, that you really make me better, and hopefully I make you better, and we continue to grow and help others succeed and help us succeed in this industry. So
and I think that's a big part of it. Like you just touched on, like the whole point of this podcast, Power Alphas, I think it's a team effort. And I think that's what we want to promote to other couples and other people around that, like, you know, you've helped me so much since I've been out of wrestling with different business ventures as well, and been kind of like managing my financial team and all that, which has really helped. But I think if you don't have that support and that good support system, that's when things start to get a little, you know, it gets hard because you're by yourself, you're a lot of emotions and all that. So it's really good to support each other and to bounce off each other's, you know, success.
You're 100% correct. You know, even as a man, I've learned something, and I've always tried to be an alpha, right? I always wanted to be an alpha.
Oh, yeah. Alpha.
I played an alpha position. I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be that guy that people respected, feared, everything. I worked my butt off to be, but I will tell you something, and this is from experience. I was wrong for a very long time, because as an alpha as I think I am, I'm nowhere near the alpha I am without a queen. Like, honestly. And I think
with a little alpha too.
No, you have a little too much alpha for my liking sometimes. But that being said, honestly,
bulls when we fight.
I mean that. I think a king needs to have a queen. And I'm going to say it, and I'll say it on the podcast, I'll say it on this. I see some of these men, and listen, it's not, I know it's hard, and if you can't find a woman you fall in love with, you don't settle. I get that.
Put your ego aside.
But sometimes you got to put your ego aside, because I'm going to tell you something. A queen makes you that much better. And I think when I was playing, my mentality was off, because I thought maybe a woman would distract me, but it could have helped me at the time. But I wasn't ready for it when I was younger.
You got to be ready.
I'm ready now.
When you're young, it's different.
And I realized that you make me more of an alpha, because you are a powerful, strong, determined, hardworking, well-spoken, very family-oriented woman. And that's why I call you my queen, because there really is no king without a queen, right? There's no king on a chessboard without a queen. So the thing is, I think that's something that is motivating people need to hear out there, is if you find a woman you love, treat her like a queen, make her your queen, be loyal, be faithful, and grow together. Because that will be way more valuable than anything you'll find outside of that, I can promise you.
Yes, amen.
Until next episode, babe. All right, babe. We have a couple good guests coming on. I'm excited.
Stay tuned. We're gonna have. Oh, my hair. We're gonna have a few good guests coming soon. But yeah, we're so excited. And obviously, don't forget to subscribe. And like. And this way you'll get all the notifications for when the episode drops. And also in the comments, we like to hear what you guys want to hear from us. It's always helpful. So please state those comments. And yeah, thanks for listening.